Hello out there! Since I've been really enjoying the new Mandalorian season lately, I wanted to build a second prop from the show. Last month we already built Mando's blaster, so today I'm going to build the Darksaber from just cardboard. The project starts with 3 pieces like this from regular cardboard, which I simply glued on top of each other. And for this I used regular white glue. Next I took a strip of cardboard and peeled off the very top layer to get some sort of paper. I used hot glue to glue it inside the piece we made before. And then I took my knife and cut away the unwanted excess in the back. You will come across this step many times in the video. I moved on by gluing 3 plates at each side of the piece we just made. They all decrease in width by a couple of millimeters to later create the rounded edge the Darksaber has. The white glue also helps a lot at this step because it dries quite slowly, so you can still adjust the plates if you misplace them. Here you can see me smashing the edges of the hilt to help creating the rounded edge next. And to do that, I glued on small strips of peeled cardboard using hot glue and kind of rolling them over the sides to create the rounded edges I was talking about. And this step has to be repeated multiple times to have both edges rounded. I also covered the corrugation at the top and the bottom with peeled cardboard. At the top I cut out the slit where the blade will later slide in. And this is how it looks so far. Now I superglued together 2 strips from a thin cardboard you can get from a cereal box. And then I glued in a little triangle piece on the top of these 2 strips. I also had to cover this opening with another strip of cereal box cardboard. And with some hot glue I put the new piece in place. This next piece has beveled edges, which means I just angled the blade around 45 degrees while cutting it out. I curved it up and covered it in peeled cardboard before I hot glued it to the top of the hilt. To build the piece that goes at the very bottom of the hilt, I glued together 3 times this piece from regular cardboard. On top and bottom I glued on this piece from a thin cardboard, followed by a version from cereal box cardboard. I used the same technique as before to create a rounded edge here, and I also covered the rest of the edges on this piece in peeled cardboard. Lastly, I poked in a hole with a sharp wooden dowel where you could fit through a D-ring in the end. The crossguard is just this piece of regular cardboard. I bent it in the front and of course covered the corrugation in some more peeled cardboard. The piece gets followed by 2 versions from thin cardboard where I also covered the edges in peeled cardboard. For the one on the top I had to cut the part that should be angled. There are many details on the guard, so I made these from cereal box cardboard and glued them on with white glue. It got pretty annoying gluing on these angled parts because of the white glue drying slow. They kept popping back up, so I guess it's better to use super glue here. I also repeated all of these details you see on the bottom, on the top. The blade is pretty hard to get on camera, but I made it twice and glued on thin 6mm white strips of cardboard on the side of the first one. I also glued in a bunch of wooden dowels, but unfortunately lost a video of me doing this. They are important so that the blade doesn't break too easily. There's one final 6mm strip at the bottom, and then I glued on the second blade piece. I created the cutting edge of the blade by gluing together and smashing the 2 blade parts. The stand is made from 3 rectangular cardboard plates. The 2 top ones have a little encarving for the plaque and 2 holes for the holders. And the edges of the stand are also covered in peeled cardboard. Speaking of the holders, they are made twice from regular cardboard with two versions of cereal box cardboard on top and bottom. And this doesn't only help creating a smooth surface, it additionally makes the cardboard more durable. And you might have already guessed it, the edges get covered in peeled cardboard. You saw me working on only one of the two holders, so here's what the second one looks like. For the plaque, I just glued a strip of cereal box cardboard to a regular cardboard strip. And yeah, as on nearly every single piece, the edges get covered in peeled cardboard. And now it's time to do all of those little detail screws on the hilt. And to do one of the two screws that go to the bottom of the hilt, I glued together 3 cereal box cardboard circles with a 7mm diameter. To build the button for the on-off switch, I stacked up 3 6mm circles. I also glued 3 5mm diameter circles together. In the top one, I cut a little hole for some extra detail. Since there are 2 of this type of screw, I made a second one. There is also a detail piece which I made from 3 trapezoids. On top, I glued on 3 3mm diameter circles. On the bottom, I glued on a small 6mm wide strip. Next, I made this piece from cereal box cardboard, which is located at the very top of the hilt. I just scored the surface a little bit in order to curve and fold this piece into shape. The two ends get superglued together. Now, to start the finishing process, I took a sandable spackle and applied it on the hilt with my fingers. Take your time and also smooth out the spackle with water. I also spackled the blade, as well as the small bottom detail piece. And lastly, I spackled the entire surface of the stand. Next, I sanded down all of the pieces with a 240 grit sandpaper. You want to sand until you start to slightly see the cardboard underneath the spackle. It's important to sand down all of the imperfections you see and create a really smooth and clean surface. After sanding, I primed all of the pieces with 2 layers of filler primer. Remember, you can find a list of materials I recommend in the video description. Now, to do the details on the hilt, I started with an M-shaped piece from cereal box cardboard. I glued it on one side and rolled it over to the second side. Under the M piece are 2 small strips to create 2 gaps. There also is a second, slightly smaller M-shaped piece, also with a small strip under it to create a gap. Next, I took 2 pieces like this, curved them up and glued them in place. There are more cereal box cardboard strips at the top, which continue that detail gap. Then I superglued together 3 cereal box cardboard rectangles with a hole in the middle to create 8 little boxes. And 4 get glued to each side of the hilt. I made 4 more strips from gluing together 2 cereal box cardboard rectangles, and after curving them up, they get glued on. I stacked up 4 cereal box cardboard circles with a diameter of 7mm to form the base of the on-off switch. I didn't show it very well in the video, but I glued it to the hilt 2 cm below the top detail pieces we just worked on. Now I glued together 2 cereal box cardboard strips and cut away a tiny 1mm strip from it. Then this strip gets separated in 7 small 8mm long pieces. They all get superglued under the on-off switch to form another type of button. Before painting, I attached the piece that goes at the very bottom of the hilt. Here are all of the pieces that form the details on the second half of the hilt. All of them are made from cereal box cardboard. The last step before painting is priming the top part of the hilt. And now for painting, I spray painted the hilt, the blade, the stand and the guard with a gloss black spray paint. And after the paint dried, I slid on the cross guard to the hilt and glued it in place. And I think the gloss black looks really good on this thing. The detail pieces for the bottom of the hilt are painted in a really dark silver acrylic paint. I used around 3 layers on all of the pieces. It's also important to really let the paint dry between each layer, because otherwise the cardboard will become really soggy and is much likely to break. Once they all dried, I glued on the largest piece. I first glued it on one side and rolled it over before gluing it to the second side. The second piece is glued on the exact same way. There are also 2 strips which go next to the buttons. I'm showing you with this strip how I glued on all 6 of them. So basically you want to use a second strip as a support to get the exact size for the gaps. And yeah, this is how I glued all of the 6 strips in place. Before working on the blade, I wrapped a piece of duct tape around where it's most likely to break. Now, to do all of the white details on the blade, I used reflective tape. I want to thank William Shakespeare and RGR Productions for giving me the inspiration of using reflective tape. Of course, both of their channels are linked in the description. And now, just as you shine a light against the reflective tape, the Darksaber is going to glow similar to a real lightsaber. But yeah, I made a bunch of 5mm strips from the reflective tape and superglued these to the side of the blade. And of course, I did this for both sides. Now for the cutting edge, I took a 1.3cm strip of reflective tape and scored in the surface at 5mm away from each edge. Then I glued on one side and folded the strip over to the second side. I tried to finish the dull side by gluing on a strip of reflective tape on the edge and cutting away the excess, but it turned out to be a bad idea because there occurred some gaps between this strip and the 5mm ones from before. So I decided to use the same technique as for the cutting edge. I took a 1.6cm wide strip of reflective tape and again scored in 2 lines 5mm away from each edge. This technique solved the problem and there were no gaps in the end, and the blade looked pretty clean. On the bottom of the blade there is also a small piece like this. And on the top I glued on a curved piece and cut away the excess. I glued on a strip like I first tried with the sides and decided to keep this technique for the top because the gaps weren't too big. And finally, I used a white marker to get all of these detail veins on the blade done. And of course, these veins can be found on both sides of the blade. In order to finish the hilt, I painted all of the screws with a silver marker. Then I attached the very top piece for the hilt. I also glued in small strips of reflective tape in these little boxes. And went ahead by gluing on the little screw with the hole in the top in this square gap. Next I glued a small circle of reflective tape on the on-off switch, followed by the actual button. I don't know how to call it, but this piece goes on the side of the hilt. And on the very bottom go these 2 little buttons. To finish the stand, I painted the holders with a silver acrylic paint as well as the plaque. Once the paint dried, I wrote the Darksaber on the plaque with a black marker. The holders get glued in the holes of the stands with hot glue, and the plaque is attached in the little engraving. I also did one final fit check for the blade, and now let's see how the build and the reflective tape turned out. I am really happy how this build turned out. Don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the last video where I built Mando's blaster. Thank you for watching and see you all soon.